Good morning, Booktubers. It is I, Buck of the Books, and welcome back to Buck's Books. You may have thought that I abandoned you again. I don't know how many times I have to have this conversation with you. I'm not going to abandon you. I've been out for 2 weeks because one of the drawbacks of reading widely is that sometimes you read a lot of books that are bad. And then you don't want to talk about the books that are bad, so as a result, you have nothing to post on your BookTube. But I finished a book that was really good, and that's not the book that I'm going to be talking about today. The book that I'm going to be talking about today is called The Nature of the Beast: How Emotions Guide Us by David J. Anderson. What you have to understand about this book is it has nothing to do with beasts or how emotions guide us. So everything on the package was not delivered on. Just right down the board. They lied to us. They lied to us the whole time. What it did have to do with was fruit flies. The entire book was about fruit flies, and that's to be expected because the guy who wrote it is something of a fruit fly connoisseur. His whole career was built around studying fruit flies, and they rigged up this ingenious little feat of genetic engineering, credit where due, where if you flash fruit flies with a certain color because of the genes being coded to the color of the light, it switches off certain entire genes just in them. And they were using that to try to feel around and locate where aggression comes from. And they did, sorta, or he at least developed a method of making fruit flies able to fight each other and fight each other in weird ways. Like, rather than, there's a specific way that male fruit flies fight male fruit flies and female fruit flies fight female fruit flies, and depending on the color combination and which genes were switched off, the male fruit flies would use the tactics that the female fruit flies typically use, which just doesn't occur in nature. And so he was like, well, that's neat. And yeah, it's neat. It's just useless. He talks about this conversation that he often has with his wife, where he discovers something neat and he comes home and he's like, oh, look how neat this is. And his wife is a project manager of some kind, and she's like, well, what does it do? He's like, well, what do you mean, what does it do? It's neat. And she's like, yeah, but neat isn't anything. Like, actual money in real life was spent for you to make this discovery, so what is the value of this discovery? He's like, well, I think scientific progress is valuable. Well, it's not. It's not, because you can just make it up. Like, you haven't done anything. You've established that there's a way to make fruit flies act weird. Cool. And I'm not necessarily like being Ayn Rand about this, we don't need to monetize this, but we do need to have it serve a function, or at least to extrapolate data. We need to draw a conclusion from it. And we haven't. Like, yeah, you've replicated this, so we know the genes are in some way associated with like the act of aggression, but like in fruit flies, okay, sort of sets a precedent that certain genes control aggression in other species, but yeah, what else is gonna? It's just not of any value. She's right. Your wife is right. So, the guy who wrote this book is a pencil neck. I'm contemptuous of him, and you know this. You know this about me in general. You know I'm contemptuous of nerds, which is ironic considering what I'm doing and my whole identity. But David J. Anderson is an academic and some sort of biologist, which is why he's screwing around with fruit flies all the time. And he is also opposed to the idea that animals have emotions. And I don't cotton to people who try to tell me my dog Beefy doesn't feel. I know that sounds like me just whispering in the dark trying to feel good about the furry little robot that I share my house with. I don't think he's a furry little robot any more than I am, and I'm a furry sizable robot. He's also pretty big, so we're both like medium-sized robots, or would be, according to the reductionists. But I don't know if I can go all the way in for the reductionism. And the reason is, it's arrogance, is what it is. So, when a guy... I can't even remember his name. I can't wait to delete his name from my head. David Anderson. When a guy like David Anderson hits the scene and he insists, well, we know that the animals demonstrate sort of stereotyped behaviors that are accompanied in human beings with aggression, you know? So we can see that this makes them aggressive, and we know how we feel when we're aggressive, but sometimes we get aggressive without feeling anything. So there's no way for us to draw a conclusion that they're feeling anger. Yeah, okay, Aristotle, that's true, but on the same token, there's no reason for us not to conclude that they're feeling anger, because anger isn't that important. You're drawing all of these, you're neglecting phenomenology. You know, you're believing that because a human has an experience, this experience is so much more unique and incredible than every other experience that can occur in the animal kingdom, because we're humans and we're special, and you're not that special, David Anderson. You're not. Humans aren't that special. We're just monkeys. We're taller and we're balder and we talk more. But there's nothing, I mean, unless you go in for like that whole Anunnaki genetic engineering thing, there's no reason to believe that we're any different from the rest of the animal kingdom. We're part of the ecosystem. We're not above it. It's not a pyramid. It's more like a web. Yeah? A dog, for example, shows indicators on its face, which we've been able to read for the past 30,000 years. Right? You can look in a dog's face and intuit its expression. You know, you can sort of guess what's going on by looking at a dog, and to a lesser extent, you can see that in cats. But I'm not going to get started on cats. So a dog has expressions on its face, and you in your head identify with with the expressions on the dog's face, and you're like, okay, so the dog is scared. It is showing us all of these characteristics. It is showing us all of these traits, these markers, that if we exhibited them on our face, you know, if we had the open eyes and the eyebrows and all that going on, then we ourselves... I don't have very much of a scared face, but that's what scared would look like. So the dog looks like that. And we're drawing from our own experience with human faces, which we innately read, in the same way that dogs innately read human faces because we've bred them to. And we say, okay, so the dog is probably having an emotional experience that is akin to feelings of fear. And if you put them in the scanner, their cortisol and adrenaline is up. But then we got a dork like David Anderson coming in saying, well, just because they have neurochemicals that resemble our neurochemicals doesn't mean that we can assume that they're feeling what we're feeling, because there's no way for you to know that another human being is feeling what you're feeling. There is no standardization of an emotional experience. You are trying to speak on behalf of all humans as a means of gatekeeping animals. But you, again, because of the problem of phenomenology, cannot conclusively state that what you feel is a human emotion that all other humans are feeling. In the same way that when I look at the color green, I know what green looks like to me. Green is all around me. But my green could be your purple. It all takes place in the processing, you know? The eyes barely do anything here. It's all processing. It's all interpretation. Perspective. It's perspective down the board. So, like, I look at Beefy, and I see an expression on his face. And his behavior typically matches that expression, you know? So I guess I can pretend that that's not emotion, or what he's feeling is some Cartesian rudiment, emotion primitives, he calls it, you know? But we can't call it real emotions because we simply don't know if animals experience emotions. David, I simply don't know if you experience emotions. I can't prove it. It can't be proven. That's what the individual experience is. That's what consciousness is. It is patently ridiculous to suggest that if something looks like a duck and quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it might be something that is duck-like, but not necessarily a duck. Maybe, dude, but who cares? Of what value is that? But the scientific method requires that we draw no conclusions until we are certain. You're not certain of anything except that you can turn on a light and make fruit flies freak out. You have no certainty, and the certainty that you'd have has no value. So why would you extend this over into robbing animals of their own individual experiences just because they don't meet your arbitrary quota for what an emotional experience should be? Because once again, you, David, do not have an operant definition for what an emotional experience should be. All you're saying is, well, it's how I feel, and no one knows how you feel, and how you feel might be maladaptive. In fact, if you're that certain that the cats that you own, and the dogs that you've encountered don't have emotions, I got news for you, pal. Something's broken in you. Something is maladaptive. I get a little heated about this because it's ridiculous to me to suggest that an animal like a dog does not have a soul, because I've never met a single dog who was worse than like the average person, universally. So if people get souls, and they often don't deserve them, and deserve is fake, but if people are entitled to souls, dogs definitely had them the whole time. The Pope said that dogs have souls, animals had souls in the 90s, but it suggested that that was more of a PR move, but like a valuable PR move, because if your religion tells me that Beefy doesn't have a soul, I can't play, dude. I'm not on board. Dog does. Dog has more soul than most people I have encountered in my life. So I know this sounds a little personal, and it is a little personal. And you want to know why it's a little personal? Because that's my individual emotional experience. And these, what you're seeing here, what you're hearing here, these are the indicators that I'm having that emotional experience. And this is how I'm trying to convey that emotional experience to the void of the internet. Yeah? So, all that you can conclude is these emotion primitives that I'm demonstrating sort of resemble your own. But you can never be certain that what I'm feeling is a real feeling. In the same way that I can never be certain that what you're feeling is a real feeling. Isn't that annoying? Isn't that stupid? Isn't that a stupid way to navigate the world? Isn't that solipsistic? Isn't that disgusting? Anyway, that's why I didn't like this book. Also, this book was so boring. It would have been done a long time ago. I dragged my feet so bad. I was 80% of the way done with the book, right? I had like 45 minutes left of the audiobook, and I switched to a fantastic book, a fantastic like old school like high fantasy, sword and sorcery barbarian book called Imaro, which I'm going to talk about maybe tomorrow, like very soon. It's a fantastic book, much better than this book. In fact, that reminded me that I liked reading. I'm also finishing up one of the books in my Kindle called I'm not going to spoil it. Just stick around and you'll see all these books that I'm definitely going to be reviewing because they're good. But because they're good, I haven't been rushing through them. Yeah? And so the ones that I am rushing through are all bad, and then I don't want to review them because they're bad. And so we reach an impasse. Thank you for listening to my deranged screed. Like, follow, subscribe, share, cut and paste, street team, print up stickers, put them on lampposts, whatever you do. Whatever you do, I appreciate. It's always good to see you, and I will see you again soon. Okay, I love you. Bye.